Judge Rhodes talks about Detroit's bankruptcy, a report card for charter schools, and Magic Johnson's plans for the State Fairgrounds. Stay put. MiWeek starts right now.
Recently, Michigan's economy has begun to turn around. Michigan's gained over 250,000 new jobs. We've paid off $20 billion in long-term debt. And our population is increasing for the first time in a decade. But to make Michigan a top 10 state, there's still plenty of work to be done. Step up and help put Michigan on top. Learn what you can do at MichiganTurnaroundPlan.com.
Funding is also provided by Delta.
Hi there, and welcome to MiWeek. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Christy McDonald. It has only been a couple of months since Detroit officially emerged from Chapter 9 bankruptcy, and now the judge who presided over the history-making case has hung up his road. Judge Steven Rhodes has officially retired. It's something he wanted to do 2 years ago, but he put those plans on hold in order to accept the landmark case. Coming up on MiWeek, the judge gives his first interview since the bankruptcy. He talks about the city's decision to file and about his ruling on reducing pensions. Plus, a new report card is giving some low marks to charter school authorizers in Michigan. We will take a look at accountability for school performance. And NBA great Earvin Magic Johnson makes another step toward revitalizing the former State Fairgrounds. It is all coming up for you on MiWeek. But we do start with Detroit and Judge Steven Rhodes' first post-bankruptcy interview. The judge has been praised for the way he handled the courtroom in the precedent-setting case. And this week he spoke exclusively with WDET 1019 FM about the city's decision to file for bankruptcy, the importance of the grand bargain, and his controversial ruling concerning public pensions. Here's an excerpt from that WDET interview.
I was actually of the opinion that Detroit should have filed bankruptcy years before it actually did.
How early do you think even?
In 2005 and 2006, the city entered into a disastrous financial transaction to shore up its pension obligations. It's sometimes called the cops and swaps transaction. I felt that all the indicators for bankruptcy were apparent then, and perhaps before then even.
Does bankruptcy court have the ability to really make those big sort of structural changes to the fabric of a community, or is it really just about the balance sheet?
It's really much more about the balance sheet than anything else, and this is especially so. People really need to understand this. This is especially so in a municipal bankruptcy case where the bankruptcy court's jurisdiction is really severely limited to debt adjustment. We do not have the authority to supervise the reorganization of the city's municipal service delivery processes. That's still up to the elected leaders and the democratic process.
Was the grand bargain, which I guess we should restate was an agreement between several parties to come to the table with large sums of money, how integral was this so-called grand bargain to the bankruptcy being wrapped up in sort of a timely and orderly fashion, all things considered?
It was the key to the ultimate prompt resolution of the case for a range of reasons. First, among the city's most strident opponents in the case were the retirees. They had fought eligibility, and that was on appeal to the Sixth Circuit by a direct appeal. Bringing them in and settling with them was essential, crucial to kickstarting the conclusion of the case. Beyond that, because it was the first settlement, it really started the settlement dominoes falling because it provided the city with a very strong settled class of creditors, and the other creditors could see the importance of attempting to settle with the city.
I just wonder if you think that will ever be replicated in another bankruptcy case, or you've had inquiries about that from judges around the country and putting something like that together.
I really feel that Detroit was unique in that regard. In this context, I have to say again that the work that Judge Rosen and his team did on the grand bargain was absolutely miraculous and unprecedented, not only in the history of bankruptcy, but in the history of mediation, as far as I know. They went outside of their roles as mediators to go out and solicit money to solve the city's problem. It will be for other people in time and in history to judge what precedent this case has. Legally speaking, there isn't actually a lot of legal precedent in the case because so many issues were settled. I suppose the one major precedent in the case is that in Michigan, under our Michigan Constitution, pensions can be impaired in a bankruptcy case. In terms of procedural precedent, it really just continues the precedent of other municipal cases that the way to resolve them is not through litigation, it's through mediation and negotiation.
And by the way, Judge Thomas Tucker was just appointed to handle a few remaining issues in the city's bankruptcy case. So let's start there with our MiWeek contributors, Nolan Finley of the Detroit News and Steven Henderson from the Detroit Free Press. Gentlemen, it's good to see you, and I will apologize up front that I do sound like B. Arthur today because I have a little bit of a cold. So
she had a very successful career.
Yes, she did. She did. So bear with me. I think it's really interesting, and Nolan, let me start with you, listening to Judge Rhodes, because we never really got an opportunity to hear his voice. And one of the things he talked about in that interview was the fact that no one from the media challenged that First Amendment, that perhaps this would be a defining case he could rule on in having broadcast this case.
Well, I mean, and that is, I think, one of many places in this bankruptcy that we didn't get to see things litigated. You know, he mentioned the grand bargain. He mentioned pensions being one of the places where there was precedent. But you take that to, you know, none of those things went to the Court of Appeals. And so this idea that this case was going to be some sort of guidepost for cases all over the country, I don't think it ever materialized.
So what do they talk about in Law School 101 when they opened up the Detroit bankruptcy case?
Well, I mean, I think they will talk. I think the grand bargain, even though it's not precedent because it's part of a settlement, is a unique feature of this bankruptcy. I don't think anybody has ever seen that happen before, but both in terms of the amount of money that came in from outside the case, from parties who were not part of the federal action, but also the fact that all of that money went to one class of creditors. You had $700 million come into the case that all went to soften the blow to pensioners. The banks, who were taking much bigger haircuts, didn't get any of that money. I still believe that or I should say, I would love to hear Judge Rhodes explain how that's fair or how that comports with bankruptcy law. Obviously, he believed it did, and they settled. But I'm not sure that the books say it should work that way.
And it doesn't matter. I mean, again, you said the key words. They settled, and I think every contentious issue here, every issue,
got settled,
was the result of a settlement. So again, he didn't have to impose anything on any class of creditors.
I would love to hear what his initial impression as a judge was when somebody said to him, "We're going to try to raise all this money to help the pensioners and not the banks." Again, drawing that distinction among creditors is on the books, not the way bankruptcy is supposed to work.
Don't you think
how did he think that was okay?
Don't you think it would have been it's helpful though that Judge Rosen was also on that part of it
no
as
question.
well?
I mean, you had the chief judge of the district court saying this works, and he structured it apparently in a way that Judge Rhodes was okay with. I think if you had banks say, "Hold on a second, I'm not going along with this, and I'm gonna challenge this at the district court level and maybe appeal it," I'm not sure how the Sixth Circuit would have seen that differential treatment of creditors in the same class.
The judge said that the pension question, Nolan, was pretty much cut and dry for him. Are you surprised that was never challenged?
Well, it was challenged. I mean, but again, they ended up settling it as a result of the grand bargain. I would have been very interested to see how this thing played out if there weren't the grand bargain and that issue were truly tested at the Court of Appeals level, where it was, where it went, but was drawn back because of the settlement. So there's a lot we don't know because Judge Rhodes, Judge Rosen, the mediators were so efficient at settling all of the contentious issues.
All right, turning to state news now, there is a new report card out today for charter school authorizers. These are the organizations that decide who can open, expand, and maintain charter public schools in Michigan. The Education Trust Midwest graded them based on student achievement and improvement, and here are some of the highlights. 10 authorizers received an A or a B grade, among them Grand Rapids Public Schools and Grand Valley State University. However, 20% of charter schools that opened between 2011 and 2014 have authorizers who scored a D or an F. Detroit Public Schools, Oakland University, and Eastern Michigan are in that group. Now, the report is named Accountability for All, and the Education Trust Midwest says the poor performance by charter authorizers proves they aren't being held accountable. We've been talking about charter school authorizers accountability for a while now, and the Michigan Department of Education said that they were going to have some sort of standards or come out soon, but they've delayed that decision. Where are we right now, Nolan?
Well, I think we're not certainly with the Department of Education or the State Board of Education. They're not going to make the decision here. This is something the governor's working on. It's part of his overall plan for fixing education, not just in Detroit, but in troubled schools throughout the state. I say that about the Board of Education. They're famously hostile to charter schools, so they are not going to be the organization that decides this. But I think the one area that the governor is looking at now in terms of charter schools is making sure the authorizers are where they should be. And you look at this and you can say, yeah, 20% have a D or the F, but you have some of the bigger charter authorizers, particularly in Detroit. Grand Valley, I think, is the largest authorizer in Detroit, doing fairly well. And I think it's not as bad a scenario as perhaps it was painted. You have 20%, most of them smaller authorizers who should be out of the business. And I think the governor's probably going to put them out of the business. But what's notable here is you do have some scrutiny of the folks who are supposed to be overseen. You lack that scrutiny anywhere else in public education in Michigan. And that's one of the benefits of charters.
You know, it's true that Grand Valley got a B, and they operate a lot of charter schools in Detroit. But Central Michigan University, which is another huge authorizer, was much lower on the list.
C. I mean, it wasn't great, but it wasn't failing.
I think the narrative here comports with the narrative generally, which is that charter schools, some are good, and some are okay, and some are awful. And that on the whole, when you compare
that looks a lot
them,
like education.
It looks like
doesn't it?
everything.
Well.
And that's the problem, right? Because we were sold this idea of charter schools 20 years ago. I sat in the editorial boardroom at the Detroit Free Press with then Governor John Engler, who said, if we do this, two things will happen. There will be a plethora of quality choices for people, for parents in places like Detroit where they don't have them now, and the public schools in those places will be better than they are now because of the competition that they'll face from charter schools. And I think, again, we have to go back to that initial promise and start asking, is that what happened here? Is that where we are? And if we're not, how do we get to that point?
And
well, we're obviously not at that point right now.
Well, it happened in, well, we're not completely at that point, but we've not seen a total failure of this. I mean, in fact, the report signals out some of the schools where, like UPrep Middle School, where 87% of the elementary school students are reading proficient. Yeah. You don't see that anywhere else in the city. So you do have quality choices.
Chrysler Elementary has 100% of their kids doing that.
You do.
Bates Elementary has 100% of their kids.
You don't see that sort of performance throughout the public schools as you do in some of the better charters in the city. I mean, some of the best schools in the city remain charter schools. Some of the worst in the city
best schools in the city are public
charter
schools.
Okay, well, we can argue all day long what specific schools are doing well, and you will always have a bunch of schools that are doing better. But the question is, if you're a charter authorizer and you have 40 schools, and perhaps the majority of them, or you only have 5 of them, are good standouts, but you've got a bunch more who are at that middling level. And as a parent, when I hear a C grade, I'm not too thrilled about that, by the way. Should you be able to? It depends. Well, should you be able to expand?
100% of the schools authorized by Detroit, or 100% of the authorizers of Detroit public schools are failing. I mean, the Detroit public school system is an abject failure, and these charters came to try to make up for that.
That's not accurate. the best schools, the highest performing schools in the city of Detroit are public schools. Chrysler
We're not
Elementary,
talking about the individual
Bates
schools.
Elementary.
We're talking about authorizers here. And if you look at the rest of the
Authorizers
schools,
of charter
you look
schools.
at the rest of the schools in Detroit, if you consider the Detroit public schools, the overseer of those, that's 100% failure
It's
in
not.
terms of the oversight. I mean, Detroit public schools
showed you-
are in emergency management, Steve.
Right.
That's been
That's
an
about-
abject failure.
that's
That's
about
why
the
you have so many
finances.
charter schools.
All right, well, let's get back, though, to
And academic
let's get back to the fact, though, should these charter school authorizers be able to continue to expand if they have this kind of grading? And we already had 11 that the superintendent of Michigan schools put on a kind of a warning list in August?
Yeah, I mean, I think the expansion question should be entirely off the table until we can figure out. Again, it's been 20 years. It's time for a reasonable assessment of what has happened over that 20 years, where the performance of these schools compares with the promise. And there's no way to look at that and say anything other than we have come up way short. The question is now, what do you do to get closer to what we all thought we were getting?
Okay,
One of the things you look at in this report, some of the worst authorizers, which had just way too many schools. Some of the best ones had fewer schools. So maybe one of the things that the governor takes a look at here is limit growth or link growth to performance.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you have more authorizers with smaller numbers of schools. But in terms of an overall indictment of the charter school system, I don't think this falls well short of that.
I don't think it's an overall indictment of the charter school system, but I'm always interested to see something like this because they take the numbers from the MED accountability scorecard. So then I often wonder, where does something like this go? So do lawmakers look at this study? Does the governor look at this study? When we put things out there like that,
I think it goes
where
into
does it
the
go
mix
then?
with, this is not the only measure of how charter schools are performing. It's just the latest, and it says pretty much the same thing that the others say, is that there's a wide range, and again, that the promise that we set out in 1994 hasn't been reached in 2015. And so it becomes part of the conversation about, okay, well, what are we going to change? How are we going to alter the structure, the infrastructure, so that good charter schools are allowed to not just continue to operate, but to build on what they're doing, and that bad charter schools are closed. That's a reasonable. Those are reasonable changes to the charter law, and we're headed in a different direction right now because we just took the cap off willy-nilly and said, well, you can open a charter school wherever you want.
The cap needed to be off, but you do need to put some scrutiny onto the authorizers. I think that's where the governor is going in terms of his reform proposal, because I think what you're going to see ultimately here, his idea is going to be to charter all schools in some fashion in the city of Detroit. You've got to do something to separate the debt from the schools, and I don't think you can hold the school system intact and do that. So I think you're going to see something along the order of what was done in Muskegon Heights, other places. Getting the right authorizers in here will be crucial, because I think you're going to go to an all-charter system in Detroit.
Yeah, I mean, I think that won't sell with Detroiters who are skeptical of themselves are skeptical of the performance of charter schools. Parents who send their kids to these charter schools, if you look at how frequently parents change which school their kids are in because they got sold on, well, this school is doing this year, it's going to be fantastic. You go there, it's not very good, and you go to somewhere else. The dissatisfaction with all schools in Detroit has built to a point where nobody believes that there's any one kind of school that's superior to the other. So the all charter idea, I think, is probably where the governor is headed. I think you're right about that. I think he will have a hard time selling that to this group of Detroiters that are working on something else.
I mean, you've got to do something with this $600 million in debt.
Agreed.
And if you leave the schools intact, the debt stays there.
And
so you've got to separate the debt from the schools, and that's the way it's been done other places.
We will hear sometime at the end of March, beginning of April,
supposedly.
Sometime in the spring.
March 31st, supposedly.
All right, turning back to Detroit, can NBA legend Earvin Johnson work his magic on the old State Fairgrounds? Magic is heading a team of developers looking to transform the massive site into a mixed-use project with stores, apartments, and possibly a movie theater. The group submitted preliminary plans to the city, and while it's still very early in the project, they're hoping to build upon the huge success of the nearby Gateway Marketplace. So they don't exactly have a full plan in place, and whenever I hear we haven't talked about the funding source, you always get a little bit leery. But huge ideas that could make a very big impact in that area, Nolan.
Yeah, and no strip clubs planned for it, which would be a remarkable change for that area. I mean, that 8 Mile is a great corridor, a great boulevard, and if you can start getting a better class of business, particularly retail business and service businesses up there, I think it goes a long way to helping not just Detroit and that section of Detroit, but also the neighboring suburbs, because it is the border boulevard.
And I
think it's fabulous.
I think that's the sort of charm of that spot, is that unlike other places in Detroit where you face density questions with retail, are you going to have enough people to support a store? Because of the proximity to the suburbs there and a lot denser neighborhoods, you know, the numbers can work, and the market questions tend to go away. But also, I'm always really cautious about, I mean, how long have we been talking about doing something at the State Fairgrounds? You know, it's been a long time. There have been a lot of false starts.
But Myers is there now.
Myers is doing really well.
And they were talking about the fact that they're taking a lot of people. A lot of customers are coming from the surrounding suburbs, from Royal Oak and Ferndale.
I think that's what's given them the encouragement here, is they've seen
it's a real mix of
so
people.
they've got a success to build off of, and man, that would be a very stabilizing project for that part of the city.
And they're talking also about housing too, starting initially with about 200 units.
Which would be really interesting, because we have not seen, at least market rate, housing development outside of the central business district and the Midtown and that sort of 7.2 square mile area that we've been really focused on. If that works, I think it really says that that things have really changed in Detroit.
How do you get a project like this off the ground in terms of working with the city or any kind of tax credits?
Well, you start with financing, and it looks like they do have folks with the money to put in place. I saw the other day that Gilbert might be interested in joining them up there. So you start with the financing. I think the zoning and everything's in place. It shouldn't be a huge issue getting it through the city. Yeah,
well, and the question is always, how much subsidy do they need to make it work? I mean, it's still market rate development in Detroit is still a very, very rare phenomenon. Everything is heavily subsidized. This seems like a better bet as a subsidy, I think, than even some of the things that we've done in other places because of the location, and so hopefully the city can help them out.
But the city has to be careful about that. You don't want to get in the same situation the state is in now, where they're paying the price for jobs and development they bought 10 and 20 years ago, and it's a steep price. If the city's going to come back, if it's going to rebuild its tax base, it's at some point going to have to be market driven and not subsidy driven.
We're not close to that. I mean, there's nothing that any of us are familiar with in the city in terms of development that hasn't had some help from subsidy, with the exception of the things that Gilbert is doing downtown. You know, the market's not there. It's not a healthy market yet. It's moving in that direction, but it's much slower than I think a lot of people would want to admit.
All right, in the last 2 minutes, speaking about friends with money, aren't we glad we have friends in Canada, because we finally got the news announced that they are going to help pay for that Customs Plaza. That was a lot of wrangling that was happening.
There was, and there was a lot of chicken littling about, oh my gosh, we're not going to get
We're never going to get the Customs Plaza.
And the bridge never going to get built. Of course it was going to come through. It was a matter of timing, and I mean, we're competing with a lot of other federal projects around the country for that money, some of which were at shovel-ready points and needed the money now because they were ready to build. We weren't there. This was always going to happen. I never believed that the federal government was just going to let us twist in the wind over this.
Well, the federal government pretty much did. It's the Canadians that put this money up. I mean, this $250 million should have came from Congress. It should have came in an appropriation. I mean, what's it say about our fiscal situation that we're borrowing money from Canada? I mean, to build our
for an international trade international trade crossing. I mean, it's a pretty darn big project.
Let's not pretend Washington came through.
They helped with this.
They put their hand out and took money.
They got the
money. How hard
money.
is that?
So if you're Canada, you're like.
What they do in Washington.
So if you're Canada, though, I mean, they're like, now we need to start. We need to start moving on this.
I mean, Canada has from the beginning been in I think the right headspace about this project, and we've been in the wrong headspace. They're saying, look, this makes sense. We need it. sooner rather than later to do the kind of trade building that we want to do.
And they're already doing infrastructure work over there on the highway leading up and what have you. They're ready and raring to go. They see this as a very vital trade crossing and something that will boost their economy.
All right, well, we're going to have to leave it there. I hope you guys stay warm. I know that you've been enjoying the weather, and
I have a jacket on this week, so.
Well, see, that's an improvement. That's an improvement. And that is going to do it for MiWeek. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll continue our conversation online right after the show. So go to MiWeek.org for an extra segment that you won't see on TV. We're also on Facebook and on Twitter during the week, so make sure you connect with us there. I'm Christy McDonald. For all of us at Detroit Public TV, we'll see you next week. Take care.
Recently, Michigan's economy has begun to turn around. Michigan's gained over 250,000 new jobs. We've paid off $20 billion in long-term debt. And our population is increasing for the first time in a decade. But to make Michigan a top 10 state, there's still plenty of work to be done. Step up and help put Michigan on top. Learn what you can do at MichiganTurnaroundPlan.com.
Funding is also provided by Delta.